Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast. This is Lex at maxfuture.com. And today it's a somber day. It's September 11th, the 10th anniversary of the tragic events 10 years ago when the Twin Towers were stricken by terrorists who flew the planes into them and knocked them down. And of course, the Pentagon was also attacked. And of course, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, a plane went down after heroic passengers overpowered the hijackers and prevented them from crashing that plane into the White House or the Capitol. So anyways, we're going on with the show today. It's a sad day, but we are grateful to have a country where things like the iPad can be developed that make us actually more independent, more free. So anyways, let's get to it. This is the iPad Podcast. It is a chit-chat-free podcast about all things iPad by me, Lex, at maxfuture.com. And you can check out the video of this podcast on YouTube or Apple under Apple Things or on Blip TV. Also, you can go to the maxfuture.com blog to get other information. And so thanks for listening. Let's get to it. Okay, one of the things I'd like to start off with on the show is to start off with the obvious. And the obvious here is to talk about, are there any good 9/11 apps? And there are a couple. One's a native app, and it's good for anybody who wants to really learn about a lot of what happened 10 years ago and on 9/11. And I guess it's free now. I'm not sure if it's always free. The app is called the 9/11 Memorial Past, Present, and Future. And it comes in 72.5 megabytes in size, and it's by Magnify Media. And it basically allows you to explore the construction of the Twin Towers, view video of the site long before 9/11, connect with the day of what happened 10 years ago. There are interviews with the creators of the memorial, along with sketches and photographs. There's 40 videos and tours of the site, museum updates, animation, and I don't know, it's got a lot of content. So, let's take a look at it. I can do like screenshots if you're looking at the video of this podcast. Okay, so when you look at the icon on the iPad, it's a nice icon. It has like a 9, and then the 11 is the Twin Towers, and it just says Memorial. Okay, so the home, let's go to home. Home, you have sort of like these timelines across, well, you have these pictures across the screen of the World Trade Center, the memorial, the library, and the gallery. And at the bottom you have buttons, info, 10 years, share, timeline, and credits. So it's pretty simple layout, and I kind of like it. For the past, you press the top thing, and it just has a little narrative about the World Trade Center, how it was constructed, who was behind it, and then it has some videos, construction of the Twin Towers, and a video pops up, and it's a YouTube video, and it's kind of helpful. Oh wait, I've got it on AirPlay. So it's got like different footage. It's got some content now. Let's see, for the past. Okay, so it has like 6 videos. No, it's got like, I'd say 9 videos altogether. No, 6 and 6. It has, I guess, 12 videos of the past, and then for the present it has 9 videos. A video of the architect, a video of the renderings, the engineering, the construction, a video of the parapet, the pools, and then it has a section of future, and it has 6 video clips are 2 video clips of of people who are working on the future of the memorial pools, and a gallery that has images from 9/11 and video gallery. So look, it's a pretty basic app. The timeline is pretty decent. It gives you a simple timeline that shows you when things happened. See if we can go back in time. It starts off with the attack, and then it goes to some key events that happened afterwards. It could be a little zippier, the timeline. So it's kind of like a history book. You can share it to Twitter, Facebook, and email. And you can also tag your World Trade Center site pictures. A lot of people go to the World Trade Center and take pictures of the site. You can tag it and share it in this app, and I guess share it with other people. Let's see. So, it's a decent app. It's free. So if you want to know more about 9/11 and World Trade Center, you should check out this app. It's pretty cool. Okay, another 9/11 app to explore actually came out in 2010, but was updated on September 6th. It's called Explore 9/11, and this is the official memorial application, and it was created, for the memorial, for the September 11th memorial, and that's also free. And that size of that is 36.7 megabytes, and that's also worth checking out. Here, let's take a look at it on my screenshots. Okay, so this 9/11 Explore 9/11 app is actually an iPhone app, but it expands well and works with the iPad, and when it's on the iPad, it works in portrait mode. And again, it's a free app, so it's kind of worth it. So this is a little different. It's sort of divided into 3 sections when you go to the home screen: Tour, Explore, and Timeline. So for Tour, it's really good if you're visiting the site. It gives you a walking tour. It tells you where to go. It has a map, and at different stops it shows like a video. So for example, tour stop 4, the evacuation, shows where people were evacuated. There's tour stop 5, tour stop 6. So basically, it's good if you've got your iPad or your iPhone and you're just taking a tour. It's a good way to sort of see the site, because it's sort of like having your own like tour operator. What else? So then there's a section called Explore, and you can explore. I guess it's just like a map. And then finally, I guess if you're at the site, the Explorer will show you what's near you. So Explorer basically is like a GPS device that shows you what's near you when you're at the World Trade site. And then there's Timeline, and the timeline shows before 9/11, at 9/11, from 7:59 a.m. to 8:42 a.m. And then, it goes on through that horrific day, and then afterwards. So again, this is free. This is like an official app, and it's worth checking out. But there's one more I want to show you. Okay, so the third app you should check out if you're interested in 9/11 is called 110 Stories, and that also is one really for the iPhone, but it does work on the iPad. And basically, this is kind of interesting. This uses sort of augmented reality, and here's the description. Blending art and technology, 110 Stories enables you to use your iPhone to rediscover lost viewpoints and share memories about the 30 years the Twin Towers stood in Lower Manhattan. A radar display instructs you to point your iPhone at the site of the former Twin Towers, then uses augmented reality to render in the tower's profile in pencil-like drawing. You then take composite photo with the towers accurately depicted in size, orientation, and location. Finally, you are asked to comment on what the photo means to you, completed stories are submitted to a repository and the map located on the 110 Stories website. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of unique. It sort of pays tribute to the Twin Towers, and it's kind of unique, so you can sort of hold it up anywhere in New York, or I guess maybe even in the world, point to the direction of the Twin Towers, and it sort of fills in the night sky. So check that out, and let me see if I can give you a screenshot too, to see what it looks like. Okay, again, like when you launch the app, it's an iPhone app. So, but it looks decent when you expand it to the iPad, and you use it in portrait mode. It's kind of simplistic. The home screen just says 110 stories and has a little etching of the Twin Towers. And you have a big camera button, and you can basically share your story. Now, it doesn't work where I am because I'm indoors. But you open the camera, and then it tries to like point you towards the World Trade Center, and then I guess it does a sketch. So on the button, you have just the home button, you have the profile button, you can log in and create an account, and then there's another button that's stories, and it has just various people who submitted their, I guess, video or pictures. Here's one. David Hodge, broken social scene from stage Williamsburg, looking over the river, and it just shows like the direction of the World Towers. Here's one that's better from Johnny Q, next to World Trade Center rebuilding tower, and he's got a picture here, and it shows where the Twin Towers would be and the distance to the Twin Tower. That one's featured. Let's see. Here's one, where I stood, and it's very close to the Twin Towers, and the person writes 10 years ago, and again today, that's all I have to say. So, it's kind of an interesting concept. People showing their perspective where they were when they were looking at the Twin Towers, or when they could see the Twin Towers. And so, I think it's very unique, and it's free. It's called 110 Stories, and it's kind of a play on words because the Twin Towers were 110 stories in height, and the word stories, means that people want to have to tell their stories about what happened in 9/11. So check out that app. It's very cool. Okay, so let's get some of the stories that relate to the iPad on this 9/11. One of the more interesting things breaking this weekend is a story out of the Wall Street Journal, as reported in Reuters that I'm looking at, that the Amazon is in talks to launch a digital book library to a service similar to Netflix for tablets and other digital books. And the story says, I guess it comes from the Wall Street Journal, that Amazon, which makes the popular Kindle electronic reader, is also expected to release a tablet to rival the iPad in coming weeks. But under the proposal for a digital media library, customers would pay an annual fee to access a library of content, the Journal reported, citing people familiar with the matter. It is unclear, it says, how much traction the talks have received. The Journal reported, citing the people familiar with the matter. And then it goes on to say some unnamed publishing executive said they were not enthusiastic about the idea because it could lower the value of books and could strain their relationship with other retailers that sell their books. So look, as a consumer, this could, Amazon has the Kindle service on the iPad, and would you want a reading subscription service similar to Netflix? And I actually think that would be great from a consumer's point of view. I just don't know how viable it would be for Amazon or book publishers because, it would make books really, really cheap. I mean, already there's a book, audiobook subscription service, Audible. You pay, I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 bucks a month, and you get X number of audiobooks a month to listen to. So that concept is similar. So, and actually, it depends on how cheap it would be. Like when I was a kid, there were these book clubs where you would pay, like, I don't know, like, remember, like, you don't have this, you send away like 20 cents, but then you would be on the hook to buy a whole bunch of books, like a book a month, that were expensive, like for $30 over the course of 2 years. And so it depends. I mean, if it's truly like Netflix, if it's like, $9 a month and you get unlimited books, that would be pretty cool, because people who are very big book readers could just read a lot of books. But on the other hand, a lot of people might sign up for like, $10 or $15 a month for books and really not read a lot of books, and then pay out a decent amount of money over the course of the year. So it's an interesting model. I know some publishers are afraid of it, but it might get people more into reading, and might make sense. And I wonder if Apple would match that. I mean, Apple right now doesn't have any subscription services on the iPad for movies, for TV, for music. And maybe it's because Apple thinks that's a service that isn't profitable. Netflix, and I have a post about that, Netflix recently started raising the prices of its content, and I'll get to that article. But anyways, interesting post about Amazon. Okay, so the next story, which came out this week, is really huge for many people, including those who really miss getting Flash and don't get Flash on the iPad. Now, as many of you know, if you get an iPad, certain video content or animations on the web won't work on the iPad because Apple refuses to support Adobe's Flash player. And that's because Flash really uses up a lot of processing power on computers, and Apple didn't want Flash to chew up the battery on the iPad. And a lot of people have complained that Flash, which is a proprietary format owned by Adobe, but which had become ubiquitous on the internet, is actually bad for computers because Adobe doesn't optimize it. Well, this inability to have Flash on the iPad has been a selling point for manufacturers of Android devices. They're, in some of the video commercials, they're like, oh, in Android, this device, Samsung Galaxy, runs Flash. Well, news came out on September 9th, and actually I read it on Boy Genius Report. I'm looking at their screen now. And basically, Adobe, is bringing Flash to the iPhone and iPad, even if Apple doesn't like it. And actually, Apple is going to like it, because what Adobe is doing is, instead of requiring you to have a Flash player on your iPad, Adobe is doing something on their side of the internet, on servers, so that you can watch Flash content. So here's the story on Boy Genius Report. It says, during the IBC trade show in Amsterdam on Friday, this is Boy Genius Report, Adobe officially took the wraps off its new Adobe Flash Media Server 4.5 and Adobe Flash Access 3.0 products, which will allow iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch users to access Adobe Flash content. It goes on to say Apple, which had long rejected the technology, doesn't need to approve the tech for it to work. So this is kind of huge. And it goes on to say, with Adobe Flash Media Server 4.5, media publishers now have a single simple workflow for delivering content using the same stream to Flash-enabled devices or to Apple iPhone and iPad. So basically, Adobe figured out a way for their Flash content to go onto the iPhone and iPad without, any sort of application having to be on the iPad, just through the web. So this is huge, basically, and in a lot of ways, and I guess it uses some sort of HTML5 conversion. I'm not sure, but it must use some HTML5 technology for it to work on an iPhone or iPad. But a lot of people on the internet see this as Apple winning its war with Adobe over Flash. In other words, Apple didn't blink, Adobe did. Adobe changed its technology so that it no longer requires, some some application to be installed on your computer to work, and that's how it's going to get there. So this is really going to help iPad sales, because to the extent anybody complained that they couldn't watch Flash on the iPad, that's all going to change, because it sounds like anybody who's updating their Flash players is going to update it so that it works with the iPad as well as the iPhone and the iPod Touch. So good news for everybody in the iOS world. Okay, so you know how the iPad is in more supply lately? Have you noticed that? Like at Apple stores, there's no longer really a long wait. Well, a story is out this week from TUAW.com, which says it's entitled LG Solves iPad Display Quality Issues, Shipments Resume. And I guess there had been a shortage of good quality displays coming out in the production of the iPad 2, and this may have slowed things down. And the article basically says display manufacturer LG was reportedly struggling to meet production targets for Apple's iPad 2 LCD due to quality issues, particularly a light leak issue noted in earlier models. According to a report from Digitimes, LG has solved those issues and is back to cranking out displays for Apples as fast as they can make them. And so LG apparently built 4 million displays for iPad 2 in August, and it's going to do another 4 million. And it goes on to say here that Apple's expected to sell 12 to 15 million iPads in the third quarter of this year, which is the 3 months that end at the end of September. So it's interesting, and behind the scenes, we take it for granted that Apple is cranking out these beautiful iPad 2s, but imagine the quality control and the production that has to go into this very advanced device. And they are beautiful, and somebody has to make them perfectly. So anyway, so there might have been a backlog because of production issues. Okay, so good news if you like to get video content on the iPad. With much fanfare, it was announced that the NBC app now has free TV shows on it, and Techland at time.com has an article which is very funny. It's called "Who Needs Hulu? NBC adds free TV shows to its iPad app." And so basically it's sort of like the ABC app from ABC Television, and basically there's some free shows, and it basically points out that there are full episodes of various shows, not all shows. It says for primetime scripted TV shows, the 5 most recent episodes are available. And for late night with Jimmy Fallon, there were 8 recent shows. And apparently the show America's Got Talent, all of it can be streamed for free. So it doesn't have everything. It gives you some content. And the point that the article is trying to make is by going free on the iPad, NBC, this is what the article says, just wiped out a big reason for iPad owners to get Hulu Plus, the $8 per month service that streams new TV shows to the iPad and other devices. So it basically says, like Hulu is backed by 3 TV networks, ABC, NBC, and Fox. And so now only Fox is holding out on streaming free shows to iOS devices. So, I don't know. It sounds like Hulu's going to be in trouble because its partners and backers are just have their own apps giving out free content. And, who knows? Maybe eventually the networks will just stream for free on the iPad all their shows just to get commercials on the iPad. Maybe we'll go back to the model that existed before there was cable television. Remember, like a long time ago, there was just, TV streaming over the airwaves for free. You didn't pay for it, and you were subject to commercials. And so maybe with the internet and devices like the iPad and Apple TV, the content producers will get the courage to just stream content for free and sell ads instead of doing these deals with the cable companies. So anyways, check out the NBC app. There's free content on it. Now, speaking of TV or video content on your iPad, I've been like dreaming of cutting the cord with my cable television company, Time Warner Cable. You know, I pay a lot of money. I've got 2 cable boxes, and on what I'm paying on top of my high-speed internet is something like $130 a month just for 2 cable boxes. You know, that does include HBO and I don't know, I think the tennis channel. But one of the things that's been holding me back, I mean, I'm very close to cutting the cable. My wife actually supports me cutting the cable, and I've got some kids. One of the things that's been holding me back is NFL football, because everything else you seem to be able to get over the internet. iTunes has the new Apple TV that can play Major League Baseball on the Apple TV, and there's the basketball season pass. So sports, you know, if I can get sports over the internet on my iPad, that would be a no-brainer. And I got to tell you, the iPad is a tremendous TV device because I'm using AirPlay more and more. Now, AirPlay is this thing where a lot of video content, video players like YouTube, like Netflix, you can press a button, AirPlay, and it'll wirelessly send it to your Apple TV 2, your second generation Apple TV. And so, like one of my young son, he actually likes using the iPad to browse for content. You know, he likes the Transformers, and he browses for content on the iPad, and then he likes to just send it to the TV. And actually, you know, if I cut the cord, the iPad as well as the Apple TV would be a major way to watch content on the TV. See, right now the Apple TV in itself doesn't run, it runs apps, but you can't download apps on it. It has the Netflix app, it has the Major League Baseball app, and it has YouTube, and of course iTunes. But the beauty of the iPad is that the iPad working with the Apple II TV turns your TV into anything the apps can run. So, for example, there's a really good news, all these TV apps like the NBC app, the ABC app. I could watch the nightly news on the internet just through streaming it from my iPad through Apple TV to the big TV. And so the issue then is sports. So this brings me to something that I saw recently, and I don't want to have to do this, but you know, there was a big announcement in late August that the PlayStation 3 will now let you run the NFL Sunday Ticket app from DirecTV. Now, DirecTV has a deal with the NFL called Sunday Ticket, where you get like all out-of-town football games that are played on Sunday. And up till now, the only way you could get it was if you had a DirecTV subscription. And where I live, there is no DirecTV. It's just cable television or Verizon Fios, which we're hoping to get where I live. But now for the first time, you don't have to be a DirecTV subscriber. You can buy the PlayStation 3 and buy a season's pass to the NFL Sunday Ticket, which you would get over the internet. So now I'm looking at CNET's blog, its Crave section, and it has an article on August 17th about the NFL Sunday Ticket comes to the PlayStation 3. And it basically says that the price is $340 for a season of the, Sunday Ticket if you don't already have it on DirecTV. So, and you would have to buy the PlayStation 3, which is the PlayStation 3, according to this article, the price drops, so it's only $250. So you have to lay out, I don't know, close to $600 to get this. Now, what I'm hoping is if Sony can do this, and get the NFL Sunday ticket, why can't Apple? Apple has $80 billion. And I've said this before. If Apple wants its TV stuff to go crazy, people would be buying the iPad and the Apple TV and who knows, a future Apple TV by the truckload if there just was more cheap content on it. And one area of content that has to be on it to really get people to defect over to Apple's iPad and the Apple TV is sports. And if Apple can secure, Apple should just throw money at DirecTV, at the NFL, and just say, here's like $1 billion. We're going to give you $1 billion or $2 billion or $5 billion. And we're just going to, we want to have the right to stream NFL games to us. Apple could buy them out. Anyways, so I don't know what to do. Should I get the PlayStation 3, or should I just hold out and hope that Apple's going to cut a deal with at some point with the NFL or DirecTV to get it? But it's very promising. I think we're heading in that direction. And I think very soon many of us will be cutting the cord with cable television. Okay, now why is Apple so successful with the iPad and other devices? Well, John Gruber over at Daring Fireball had a very interesting article entitled The New Apple Advantage. And he basically wrote this very lengthy article after discussing a blog post by Peter Bright, who wrote a good piece earlier at Ars Technica, according to Gruber, documenting his attempt to buy a MacBook Air-like Windows laptop. And basically, Bright's article said that, look, if you go to other sites to try to find comparable products, they're a maze. For example, Bright talked about shopping on Dell's site, and, he basically says how challenging it is. Here's a quote from Bright. He says, "It's even worse if I just browse without searching. The options I get are just meaningless. Yes, I want, quote, everyday computing, end quote. So I want an Inspiron, but hang on, I also want, quote, design and performance, end quote. So I want an XPS. Wait a second, I want, quote, thin and powerful, end quote, too. So maybe I want a Z series, but the only line that apparently matches my broad search criteria, lightweight, 11 to 14 inches, I wouldn't even consider because I don't want a, quote, gaming, end quote, laptop. And so I'm never going to click Alienware." So anyways, the point is that other sites, they have just too much in their product line, too many choices. It's too confusing. It's too cluttered. And it makes shopping very challenging. But Gruber takes it another way, and he says, look, these limitations in design in the iPad are good. And he points out how the choices for the iPad are simple. Here are the 3 choices, he says. If you're going to buy an iPad, here are your choices. White or black, that's one choice. And then what kind of connectivity, GSM, CDMA, or Wi-Fi only. And then third, what kind of storage, 16, 32, or 24 gigabytes. So that's it. Those are your three decisions. There's only one CPU, he says, only one display, and one amount of RAM. So, that's a very good point. And he says, by limiting it also, it's not only makes it easier for consumers, but it makes it easier for Apple to really ramp up production. So, very good point by John Gruber. Now, to follow up on what John Gruber said, Apple this week did revamp its online store for purchasing the iPad. So now when you go to the store and click the iPad section of the store, here's the interface that you get. They make it really simple. The first thing they say is choose a color. So you can pick black or white. Then after okay, I'm going to pick white. Then step 2, choose a model. 60 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, 64 gigabyte. I'm going to click 64 gigabytes. And then it says, what do you want? Do you want, choose a model. And it gives you choice between Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi plus 3G. So it's really, it's a very intuitive, easy way to choose. And so Apple redesigned it to make it simpler for people to buy. So check it out. Now, in John Gruber's recent post, he mentioned an earlier article that he had commented on by Cory Doctorow, and it had come out on July 25th, 2011. Cory Doctorow had obtained a Samsung Galaxy Tab and reviewed it. And I guess I missed that article, but it's very interesting. You see, Cory Doctorow, I know from following him on Twitter, he's not a big Apple fan, and he's been looking for something to compete with the iPad, and he got a hold of the Samsung Galaxy Tab, but he really didn't like it. And here is his analysis. The article is entitled "Why Samsung's Galaxy Tab is Meh," and he makes a lot of good points. He basically got it, and he goes, there are a few annoyances and a couple of dreadful flaws that make the Galaxy Tab 10.1 into a disappointment. And this is what he says. First and worst of all, there is the business of the USB connector. And he goes on to say, Apple's iOS devices famously use a long, flat, proprietary connector that provides some easy cash for the company in the form of specialist cable sales and locks competing devices out of using speaker docks and other accessories. This is one of my gripes with Apple devices, and the use of standard, cheap, widely available mini USB cables in Android phones, including the excellent Samsung Galaxy S, which I'm delighted to own, is a major selling point for me. This is what Doctorow says. But then Doctorow goes on to say, but Samsung tablets, for no discernible reason, use a custom tip that isn't any of the standard mini or micro USB ends. Instead, it's a wide, flat connector like the one Apple uses, but of course, it's not compatible with Apple's cables either. And Cory lost his cable, and he ran out of battery. So that's really interesting because here Android's supposed to be open source, but what companies are doing with the Android is they're forking it, and they're also making the hardware proprietary. So it's kind of stupid of Samsung to make their device proprietary when the whole point is to compete with Apple, which is proprietary. Then he goes on to say, Doctorow, likewise disappointing was the decision to omit the micro SD card slot on the Wi-Fi only version of the tablet. Apparently the Galaxy tablet only has that micro SD card with the 3G version. And then it goes on, apparently the way Samsung implemented the data transfer is terrible. In the Galaxy Tab, you have to plug it into your PC, which then the Android Galaxy launches, according to Doctorow, a Samsung file transfer app that takes up your whole screen. He goes on to say, this communicates with a desktop app to allow you to transfer files very, very slowly. And if you try to launch another Android app while the file transfer is taking place, it severs communications with your PC, causing the file transfers to fail. In other words, the system that's supposed to let you use your Android while you transfer files requires that you not use your Android while you transfer files. So he goes on to say, Samsung really doesn't seem to have its head around the notion of Android's strength being its non-proprietary open nature. So altogether, he's not very happy with it. And he's hoping that the Lenovo ThinkPad tablet will be better. So it's unclear what's going to compete with the iPad 2 or the iPad 3. Okay, so one thing that a lot of people expect to compete with the iPad is an Android tablet that a lot of people think that Amazon will come out with. Well, MG Siegler over at TechCrunch.com, he wrote a post on September 2nd in which he says, quote, Amazon's Kindle tablet is very real. I've seen it and played with it. So he claims that Amazon is coming out with a 7-inch tablet that will have a capacitive touchscreen. It will only use 2-finger multi-touch instead of 10-finger like the iPad. And it's going to be limited in terms of size. It's only going to be a 7-inch screen, and it's going to have very limited storage. A lot of the stuff is going to be streamed. I think he says it has like 6 gigabytes of storage. But he liked it. He played with it. And he claims that Amazon's going to see how well the 7-inch does and then maybe release something that's the size of the iPad. Now, also Amazon, well, here's the key thing. It's going to be 7 inches. It's going to run Android, but it runs apparently like a forked version of Android. In other words, Amazon took Android from Google, which Google gives away for free, and made its own sort of version of Android on it. And yeah, it only has 6 gigabytes of internal storage, and there's supposed to be a SD card expansion, but MG Siegler couldn't find it. But the key thing is it's only going to cost $250, and you're going to get the Amazon Prime service for free, according to MG Siegler, if you buy it. Now, Amazon Prime is the service where for $79 a year you get free unlimited 2-day shipping, and no minimum purchase for the free shipping. But also recently, Amazon, if you have Prime service, will give you access to instant video service, instant video streaming. So that's, that makes it cheaper, because if it's $250 and you get the Prime for free, so that's really, I don't know, $180 for the device. So I don't know. So look, it's going to do well because it's cheap, right? But will it compete with the iPad? It's really in a different category of the iPad. But I'll tell you, like, one of my concerns that I have is that Amazon, everyone likes Amazon because their stuff is cheap. They give it away for free. But can you trust anybody who gives you stuff that's very cheap? And I wrote a post about this. Netflix recently, and this is relevant to your use of the iPad. Netflix, early in the summer, it raised the price of Netflix so that you could no longer get like 1 DVD a month and unlimited video streaming for, let's say, $9 a month. Netflix basically said you had to make a choice. Do you want unlimited streaming for $8 a month, or do you want 1 DVD a month for $8 a month? But if you want both, now it's $16 or $17 a month. Well, very recently, Netflix said you can only now stream to 1 device at a time, and that's a problem for me because, my daughter uses the iPad. She streams Netflix on that. What if I want to watch a Netflix movie on another device? Well, you have to pay for another streaming account. So my point being, like with Amazon, Amazon is now giving away the video streaming if it sells this tablet as part of the deal. Well, how do you know they're not going to raise the price later on? And also, if they're forking Android, and Amazon has its own app store, isn't this bad for other Android devices? Because you're not going to be able to then switch to another Android device and use it. In other words, it's proprietary. This is Amazon. So I think it's going to do well because I think a lot of people buy the $115 Kindle. But on the other hand, it's interesting. A lot of the Kindle advertising is that it uses e-ink, so you could see it at the beach in bright sunlight. And this tablet, according to MG Siegler, will not have e-ink. It's going to have like an LCD screen. So it's going to have the same sort of backlit screen that, or similar screen that like the iPad has. I mean, what this is really going to be competing with is Barnes & Noble's Nook, which also runs a sort of a limited version of Android, the Nook Color. So that's who they're going head-to-head with. So I think you're going to see a lot of these cheap Kindle and Nook Android devices selling for $250 or maybe even $200. But, why doesn't Apple do that? And I think the reason I think I've talked about this before, Apple doesn't do that because where would it fit a 7-inch device in its pricing? Right now, the iPod Touch, the minimum one, the 16 gigabyte one, sells for $200, and the iPad sells for $500. So what would you price the 7-inch iPad at? Would you price it at $350? I guess you could. I guess that's where you'd have to fit it in. But Apple would still have to make a margin on that, and maybe that's the challenge for Apple. But I do think there is a market for 7-inch devices. They are lighter. They're easier to hold when you're standing up than the iPad, which you really need two hands for the iPad. So we'll see if how Apple's going to respond to any challenge by Amazon with a Kindle Android device. It could be that Apple just expands the line and comes out with a 7-inch device, even though Steve Jobs said that it didn't make sense to have a 7-inch device. But we'll see. Okay, so there's an interesting story on Business Insider. Now, we all know Apple goes to extraordinary lengths to keep its products secret and keep the development. They like to surprise people and astound them. And there's an article in Business Insider called "Here's a Great Story About the Astonishing Lengths Apple Went Through to Keep the iPad Secret." And basically, in the article, they talk to a developer of a successful iPad app. They don't say who that person is, but the person basically says it was a year ago, and here's what they say. "Now that it's over a year, I can talk about it. I was probably the 6th person to get an iPad. We got 2 of them flown out. The criteria was that we had to have a room with no windows. They changed the locks on the door. 3 developers and I were the only people allowed to go in the room. Apple needed the names and social security numbers of the people who had access. Apple needed to be able to drill a hole in the desk and chain the devices to the desk. They used those bicycle cables. They had these custom frames built around them so we couldn't even tell what the iPads looked like. We could plug into them so that we could code to them, and we could touch the screen and play with that, but we couldn't see the form factor. They then took pictures of the wood grain. If any pictures leaked out, they could trace it back to which desk they came from." And it goes on to say, "I wasn't allowed to tell our CEO, I wasn't allowed to tell anybody about anything that we were doing. I couldn't even tell my wife." So anyways, look, it does make sense. I mean, how else is Apple supposed to really keep this stuff secret and have developers develop apps unless it makes it, very tight? Okay, so we all know that the Apple cloud service, iCloud, is going to probably start sometime in the fall, and that's going to allow you to download music that you have on your iCloud account that reflects what you have in your iTunes account or iTunes app, and you're going to be able to download it from the web to your iPad and to the iPhone. We all know that. Well, you also know that Google came out with its Google Music service on the internet where you can upload 25 gigabytes of music to Google Music Beta and then stream it. Well, this week, Google Music basically allows you now to stream through a web app to your iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch. And this is what TUAW.com said. "The app isn't as pretty as the native application on Android or the web app for desktop, but it's functional. You can browse your music library via artist or album. Controls are intuitive and the player is responsive, especially when you consider each track is being streamed over the internet. Music will play in the background while you browse your online music catalog and will even continue to play when you switch to another application." So, look, if you're inclined, you can get into Google Music Beta and upload your music. Now, I may use it because I think the iCloud Match service, which that's what Apple calls its music service, and Apple's service is very different. Remember, when Match was announced, Apple isn't going to make you upload your music. Instead, Apple's going to look at the music that you have on your hard drive in iTunes, and if it has that music in its catalog, it's going to make a 256 kilobyte whatever version of that MP3 or ACC file available online automatically, which is a big deal because you don't have to spend hours and hours uploading all your music. It's because it's not going to be uploading the music, it's just going to be checking the music on your hard drive, and if it matches what Apple has, they're going to make that available. But I believe Apple's service it's limited to 25,000 files. And I have more than 25,000 files. So what I might do, because I have now an account with Google Music Beta, I think I uploaded like one track when I realized it took so long. So I think what I'm going to do is my favorite tracks, 25,000, I'm going to put in iTunes Match, iCloud Match, and then I'm going to put the rest on the Google Music Beta and stream it from there. So anyways, you might want to check it out if you have the Google Music Beta. You just go to, you point your mobile Safari to music.google.com, and that's how you get onto it. Very cool. Okay, so I know that some of you out there are probably bloggers like me, and for a long time I've been looking for a better way to write my blog on Tumblr. My maxfuture.com blog is hosted on Tumblr, and there's a Tumblr app, but it's not optimized for the iPad. And I have various writing apps that are very good, but somehow I came across, I guess people had referenced it, but well, most of the writing apps I have are good writing apps, but they're not really blogging apps. In other words, you can write and you can maybe email it to Tumblr, but it just doesn't integrate directly with Tumblr. But then, I don't know, somehow I came across this app called Writing Kit. It's been out for a while. It's on version 1.3. It was last updated on August 10th. And basically, it's sort of like a very ambitious app. It costs $4.99. It's an iPad optimized app, and it can do a lot of things. Here's a description. It says, Writing Kit is built for Markdown users and comes with an awesome web browser for researching materials. So this is very cool because it's not just a regular word processor, but it recognizes Markdown formatted text. Now, what is Markdown? Markdown is sort of like a very simple way. Actually, John Gruber of the Daring Fireball, he co-created the Markdown language. And Markdown is a way to sort of format your text for the web without having to learn how to write in HTML, HTML4 or HTML5, which involves more code. So it doesn't look like gobbledygook Markdown. So if you want to post something to a blog and Tumblr recognizes Markdown code, it's an easy way to code your content. But it's not really complicated code. For example, if you wanted to bold like a word, you would just put 2 stars before the word and 2 stars afterwards, and that makes it bold. There's a little more complicated code. If you want to create like a footnote that then references back to where you put the footnote, there's a little code where you put like a I don't know, those little triangle brackets on the left, and then footnote and a caret, and then footnote, and then 1, and then a reference. Anyways, it's not that hard to learn, but the point is Writing Kit supports that. But the other thing that it does, which is kind of cool, is that it has a browser built into it, so you can browse the internet and save the link into the story that you're trying to write. And it also syncs with Dropbox, so you can if you're using an app on your computer like your Mac that also edits Markdown, you can go back and forth between this app and that app. But the other thing is that it you can log into your Tumblr account and other accounts that you have blogs on, and it works with Tumblr. So I've just started to use it. I mean, it also has bookmarks. You can organize your bookmarks in the browser, and you can browse your online bookmarks on Delicious and Pinboard and Zootal. So this developer is very ambitious. It also says it has it also can work with Instapaper, and you can send your links to Instapaper. Now, the developer is a guy named Quan Ando, and this is version 1.3. It also has support for external keyboards, but this is a highly rich, very complicated app that does a lot, and I have to give this developer credit for trying to make something truly ambitious. Let me give you some screenshots and just take you through it. I've just started using it and made some initial basic posts on my Tumblr blog, but it's very cool. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so here's the Writing Kit app, and I guess I'm using it in portrait mode, and there's also a document in there regarding how to use Markdown, and it's got a simple UI. At the top you've got this toolbar, and you've got a file cabinet, and that's where all your documents are. There's some default documents in there. You've got your welcome text, your tips text, and then Untitled is I guess a document that I started writing. I am testing the Writing Kit app. I just purchased the $5 Writing Kit app for the iPad. One of the reasons I got it, that it lets you write in Markdown and also directly post to Tumblr. I will let you know how well it works. So I kind of like the layout. It takes a little time to learn. So after that, you've got a plus button to just create a new document. It gives it a name, a random number. Here it's Untitled 131579. But you just click on it, and you can backspace and rename it. I'm going to name it iPad Post. And what else? You've got you can change your fonts. It's got a number of fonts choices: Georgia, Helvetica, Hoffler Text, Times Roman, Marker Felt, Courier. And then the other thing is you can quickly just see how your stuff looks. So, for example, I'm going to write something. I'm going to use the star convention, 2 stars, and I'm going to write iPad. This should make it bold in Markdown. iPad test. And then I'm going to do 2 stars. And let's see. And then I press this I button, and there it gives you a little preview of what it's going to look like in Final Method. And then you've got like a quick research. If you want to research a term, let's put in iPad, and it gives you a definition. So it's got this. I guess it's looking on the web and using, Wikipedia and other Wikipedia-like resources, including DuckDuckGo.com and Wall Street Journal web links. So it's basically it's a handy tool for researching stuff for your blog. So that's kind of cool. Then, of course, there's the web browser that you can launch. And it says here the built-in web browser is a place where you can do your research and look for reference material while you're writing. I like this because you don't have to go switching back and forth with the Safari browser. It's got all sorts of power tips in here. You've got bookmarks, you've got reading cues, and I guess you can also, in the bottom, you've got little arrow, and it says you can send the stuff that you find to Readability. You can add it to your queue. You can add it to Instapaper. You can share it, and you can insert it into the editor. Now, I find that part to be very cool. So let's see. Let's go to Max Future, maxfuture.com, and let's see what happens. Okay, so there's my blog, and I'm going to just look at this article, which is this article that I wrote about sending off my 27-inch iMac to OWC. So watch this. I'm going to insert into the editor, and it says insert link. I'm going to move the cursor, insert link at cursor, and it gives me a little preview of what the insert link would look like, the title, the address, and then what I want it to say, and then boom, there it is. I inserted it. Now I'm going to preview it, and that's what it looks like. Look how pretty that looks like. So I don't see the markdown code. I just see iPad test. Then I see sort of linked text that says Max Future sent off my 2010 27-inch iMac to be upgraded by OWC. So look, and then the keyboard has cool things for, like, if you want to, like, bold, or you make something a heading. If you want to make something bold, you don't have to use markdown code. Or if you want to put in a link, or if you want to insert a picture, or quotes, or bullet points, or numbering the things. So look, I just started using this, but this to me seems to be in a league of its own, because I have these other writing apps, and they're good writing apps, but they're not designed specifically for blogging. So this seems to be designed for both blogging and for writing. Now, like, some of the tasks, you can export the markdown source code. You can export the markdown file. You can print the markdown file. You can export the HTML source code. So what we're getting is the iPad becoming more and more of a content creation device, because before you couldn't really do this, but developers are creating apps that really are making it so that you don't really need a computer anymore. So check it out. It's called WriteKit, WRITE space kit, KIT, and it's about $4.99, and it looks pretty good. So check it out. Of Chryslers, and so it's free. So we're seeing that more and more, that apps are being used almost sort of like as advanced websites for enterprise to get out their stuff. So basically the description is that it's showcases the 2012 model year full buyer's guide for the Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Fiat fleet sales force and customers in a user-friendly touch-based format. And so you can, I guess, scroll through different models. You can see, the technology and product highlights, safety information, the colors, the specs. So, I say we're going to see a lot more of this, and it is probably a better way to go shopping. It's gotten some reviews so far. But my point being that more and more businesses are going to be using the iPad to showcase their products, their services, and Chrysler's the latest example. Okay, so that's it for episode 71 of the iPad podcast on this 10th anniversary of 9/11. So thanks for listening. This is a chit-chat free podcast. Again, you can check out the video version of this podcast on YouTube under Max Future. Just search for Max Future on YouTube, or Max Future on Blip TV, or check out Apple Things, which is the video version of both my Apple podcast and my iPad podcast on iTunes. Any positive feedback would be greatly appreciated in iTunes, YouTube, and Blip TV. And of course, remember, if you want a Google Plus invitation, just email me at maxfuture@gmail.com and I'll send you an invitation. And anyways, see you next week, and thanks for listening.
This has been a Max Future production.